But forget the Emmys. Forget the NFL, as if you already haven't.
What?
The real honor that was conferred over the weekend, well, recently, was the honor for the most unfair legal jurisdiction in the country. And the winner is
Going out.
Cook County, Illinois. All right, yeah, Cook County, Illinois. Again, Cook County, Illinois. This, according to the Institute for Legal Reform, that's part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Cook County, Illinois, edging out L.A.,
Oh, really?
edging out Jefferson County, Texas, edging out New Orleans, edging out San Francisco, edging out Detroit, edging out even Madison County, Illinois, which had a nice 7th place showing, tied for 6th, really, with Dade County, Florida.
And Madison County, remind people, is...
Metro East, down by St. Louis.
Thank you.
Cities or counties with the least fair and reasonable litigation environment. This is the category. And here's why, in part, Cook County continues to top the charts, putting together more hardware than Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Maybe it's because they have, in part, have a Cook County Board president that's reflective of the political culture here that extends to the legal system. Tony Preckman, I think, summed it up nicely as recounted by a former Utah State Senator Lillenquist. We played this clip on Friday, but it bears playing again. The story when he was working for the Institute for Justice, their Center for Entrepreneurship, and talking to local elected officials about how promoting entrepreneurship could help lift people out of poverty, particularly in urban centers, disproportionately minorities. And this is the story.
One of the more sobering experiences of my life was my first summer of law school. I was working with the Institute for Justice Clinic on Entrepreneurship down at the University of Chicago. We were trying to help inner city Chicago entrepreneurs launch their business. We had some great people with great ideas. And I went and met with the alderwoman of South Chicago, who's now in, I think, a much more powerful position. But I won't mention who she is. But I sat down with her and told her we were offering free legal advice to help people start up businesses. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm opposed to self-employment. You give these people false hopes that they could ever earn a living on their own." I was stunned.
Are you sure you don't want to mention who that alderwoman was?
Tony Preckwinkle.
I knew it was Tony Preckwinkle. So there you go, the great reveal. I mean, understand the implications of that. And by the way, these people, she refers to minorities as these people.
Yeah.
That apparently doesn't inflame the passions of anybody here because she's a liberal Democrat. But understand what she's saying. If you don't believe in self-employment, then you only believe in government-directed, you believe in a government-directed economy. Without the entrepreneur, without the individual who starts the business, there is no private sector employment. I don't believe in self-employment. You give these people false hopes they can earn a living on their own. Before Barack Obama made it fashionable to say you didn't build that, she was saying you didn't earn that. No private sector employment is the implication of what she said, which, oh, by the way, that's fascism. That's the foundation of fascism. And that's the Cook County Board president. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Bryan Quigley. He's the Senior Vice President for Strategic Communications for the U.S. Chamber's Institute for Legal Reform that puts out this report that I was referencing. Bryan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Great to be with you, Dan and Amy.
Good morning. And so what is it that Cook County's doing to top the charts year after year?
Well, you got to be number one in something, I guess, right?
Yes.
But, in this survey, essentially what's happening is that trial lawyers from across the country are coming into Illinois and setting up shop. So really that's what's happening in Illinois, is that it's become a mecca for out-of-state trial lawyers who are bringing their cases into your state.
And that's also, I mean, that's been happening in Madison County, too, for decades, right?
for decades, Madison County has been doing that. I think a couple of years ago, 98% of the asbestos claims in Madison County courts were from people who were not from there, and 95% were not from the state of Illinois. So it's a problem. I think 28% of all asbestos cases in the entire nation come through Madison County. We're talking about a county that's like 50,000 people, right? So
Right.
It's a mecca, and then of course Chicago is also a mecca for out-of-state litigation.
But why? Why
Right.
is it all coming through the Metro East, and why is it all coming through, not all, but a preponderant amount through Cook County? There's something about how we have this system set up. There's got to be something about the quality of individuals on the bench where the trial lawyers say this is the place to be.
Well, it's a very incestuous place with regard to the judges and the plaintiff's bar who make contributions to some of these elected officials' campaigns, and they're treated very, very comfortably, and so they know that they can bring these cases in. There are rules here, the court rules and other rules that allow for these cases to stay. I mean, the key here is that if a judge is not going to say that, gee, the plaintiff and the defendant have nothing to do with this location, then you shouldn't be here. Go back to Pittsburgh or wherever else you're from and sue there, right? I mean, the courts there should not be giving other people their day in courts. They should be giving the local people their day in courts. And so the courts are very cozy. There are campaign contributions that are happening from the plaintiff's bar, and that's what's going on.
So let me see if I can sum this up. So the one business that Illinois is attracting is trial lawyers who drive all the other businesses out of Illinois.
As I said, you got to be number one in something.
I mean, so
We're going to have a parade.
well,
Yeah.
and the Institute for Legal Reform, I know some of the work you guys have done profiling specific small business owner operators and their experiences with kind of the jackpot justice system you're describing. But I mean, in terms of trying to translate the costs to people, kind of tort reform and the justice system, most people don't have never intersect with it. These are somewhat esoteric topics. How does it redound negatively to, Joe Sixpack and Sally Housecoat and their lives in Cook County in the state of Illinois?
Right. Well, in our survey, 85% of the senior executives that took this survey who are responsible for jobs and economic growth, 85% said that a state's litigation environment does impact their decisions about where to locate or expand, right? So if this, and that's a record for us. We've never had that number higher. So the bottom line is the employers in the nation are looking at things like a state's lawsuit environment like never before when they think about where to grow or expand. Now, I know that jobs and economic growth is a problem for Illinois, and I would suggest that this is a tangible problem for your listeners, and you can't get good jobs coming here. And I know there's been some companies lately that maybe have been in the news, and they went to other states that are surrounding the state, but that's a tangible problem.
Well, then Amazon is looking at possibly opening up a second headquarters here in Chicago. Do you think this would affect their decision?
According to our survey, yes, right?
I mean, they're looking at Chicago.
They are, according to Mayor Emanuel.
Yeah, but who would challenge the veracity of anything Mayor Emanuel has to say? No, of course not. Of course they are. Sure they are. Everybody is. Of course. Everything's fine.
But
there's nothing to see here.
But how do we stop this? I mean, is there any way to end this?
Well, yeah. What are some of the states? We've got the worst examples. Illinois overall, I think, was 48th out of 50 on your list, with Cook County being the worst in the country for a local jurisdiction. But there's a top 10 too. So there are states that are doing it right. And what are some of the things that they do that states like Illinois don't?
Well, they have consistency, for one thing, in their court system. I mentioned before that, for example, cases that don't belong there don't stay there, right? So that's one thing. Another thing that Illinois could do that other states have done is to kick junk science out of the courtroom. And so when you have cases that are built on flimsy junk science, they should be booted out, but they're not there. Another thing that
on the
Yeah,
junk
go ahead.
science thing, give us an example of what you're talking about.
Well, if there is a piece of quote-unquote scientific research or an expert that has been paid for by the plaintiff's bar that is not peer-reviewed or is not been accepted science, then it shouldn't be in the courtroom. For example, and this is happening in St. Louis County as well, in your neighboring state, when you have these talcum powder cases. Well, there's never been any proof that talcum powder causes ovarian cancer, and yet there are plaintiffs' lawyers running around suing the makers of talcum powder saying that that's the case. In fact, the FDA itself certified that there is no evidence yet. There are going to be some studies that are plaintiffs bar friendly that they use in the courtroom. So if the judges don't kick these studies out of their courtroom and say we're not going to allow it, then that's where you see these huge verdicts. Another area is, as I mentioned, litigation tourism. Now, the state could pass a law very easily if you had the right folks in Springfield that would disallow this kind of thing. That would say, nope, our courts are for our citizens, they're not for litigation tourism. So that's another thing that they could do.
Gosh, how long has this been going on?
Since
we've
the
been doing
lawyers
this
were
survey-
licensed. Yeah.
Well, it's been going on a long time.
And yeah, but
Go ahead.
and you do this annual survey, kind of the metrics that you use to come up with the survey, and the ranking, so that people have a sense of whether their state is heading in the right direction or the wrong direction with respect to this aspect of driving their business climate.
Right. Well, we measured 10 aspects of a lawsuit system, things such as I mentioned, enforcing meaningful venue requirements, things like scientific and technical evidence, the trial judge's impartiality, the jury's competence. These are kinds of things that we measure, and we interview. This year, we interviewed more than 1,300 senior attorneys, general counsel, and other executives at major companies, as I said before, that do the hiring. And we score a state, and we roll those scores up, and then we rank the states 1 to 50. And Illinois is 48th, as you mentioned earlier. But to your point, Illinois has really been in the bottom 10, bottom 5 for the last 10 years at least. And so it's been a perennial problem, and Cook County has been a perennial problem county for the nation, really.
Yeah, Cook County also the quintessential example of the old saw that anybody who wants to be a judge shouldn't be a judge. That's the Cook County Circuit Court. He is Bryan Quigley, Senior Vice President for Strategic Communications for the U.S. Chamber Institute for Legal Reform. You can check out their study online and read the details at instituteforlegalreform.com/states on this specific report. Bryan, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, thanks so much.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've